Myquillyn Smith. It is such a delight to have you on For Real. Thank you for taking the time in a very busy season.
Oh my goodness, Kim, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, golly. Listen, I feel like we've been hanging out because I've been listening to your podcast and I'm matching your words in live time with words that have been coming into my ears. So I can't wait to talk about the podcast. But my first question for you is you have been helping people figure out their spaces for about 17 years. Is that about right?
That sounds about
Officially 17, probably more before that.
yeah. Yeah.
So I wonder what drives you to keep working in that particular world, in that space.
That's such a good question. And I cannot imagine not doing it. I am
Okay, then.
obsessed with all things home. And I say that I see the world through house colored glasses. So if I'm watching a cooking show and I learn something, I'm like, how can I apply that to my house? If I'm,
Aha.
at a sporting event, which I never am because my kids are grown up now, I'm like, how can I apply that to my house? It's not on purpose. It is just the
Okay.
way I was created.
Okay. Then probably more than 17 years. Like when you were younger
Yes.
as well, growing up, did you love beautiful things or what does that look like for
What it
an
looked
adult, a
like.
young adult or a child?
Right. Well, it was, I have a sister who's 3.5 years younger than me. It
Okay.
looked like a very frustrated younger sister when we were playing Barbies because I didn't want to act out scenarios. I wanted to decorate their house only.
She wanted a story. You wanted
Yeah,
a really great living room.
exactly.
Got it. Okay. So this is a wiring. Michael, and you have written several books. You have a new book coming out. It's called House Rules: How to Decorate for Every Home, Style, and Budget. And I want to tell you, this book is a total treasure. You are very clear in saying, I mean, it's a beautiful book, first of all, just to have it on my coffee table, to have it out. I'm very excited that it will be elevating the space in which the space it inhabits. But this is a different kind of design book because you make it super clear that you are looking to help us um, not be your imitator, but to crack a code.
Yeah.
So tell us about the heartbeat behind House Rules.
It is called House Rules, which is scary because I'm actually not a rules girl, but I believe that it can be helpful to have those underlying guidelines. When we're in school, we learn I before E, except after C to help us spell. And it doesn't matter what we're spelling. If we're doing a resume, if we're writing an Instagram post, those universal rules still work. It
They
is
apply.
exactly the same with
Mhm.
decorating. Your style is different than my style. We have different budgets. We have different kinds of houses. We're in different seasons of life, but there are still universal decorating truths that ring true. And I like to think of it as like, I think a lot of us, we're styling our mantle. Maybe we just moved to a new house and we put everything back on our mantle that was there at our last house and it looked
Uh-huh.
so good. And we put it up at this house and we're like, what? Why does it
It's
look ridiculous? Why
right.
did I buy everything up there? And I don't love the way it looked. And
Right.
I love to figure out why. And that's what this book is. It's like the why. Why do some things look good and other things look hideous?
That is the subtitle in your heart. Why do some things look
My
good
heart.
and other things look hideous? Um, I love this because I feel like oftentimes when just for me, I love beautiful spaces as well. I've not been trained in any way. But when I look at design projects or even other design books or resources, my first instinct is to shrink a little bit because I think I don't know how to recreate that. Even if I love that, I'm not sure why it works. So the reason I love this book is that it talks to the every girl and the every man to say the reason you love how this looks, there's a system behind here. Not that the system is rigid, but there are some things that will help you out. I know you've had some practice trying out these rules in your life. You've mentioned that you moved 15 times.
Yeah.
15. 1 5. Okay. Feel like we need just a moment of silence for that right there.
Thank you.
Yeah, well done. What are some things you knew with move number 15 that you did not with move number 2 or 3?
Mm. I knew a lot more. I earned it. One thing I knew to not wait for better circumstances. I think that's the number one thing that I
Ah,
do all these moves. because a lot of times we were renting, or a lot of times we didn't have the budget. I am still waiting on that
Yeah.
great budget, that unlimited budget. But what I have found is the limitations lead to innovations, which is a house rule. But I've learned to actually be thankful for those tricky parts of my house that seem impossible, that I'm like, what in the world am I going to do with that weird little corner under the stairs? What I have learned over time is, if you have a subscription to Southern Living or Better Homes and Gardens, it's often those weird little parts of someone's house that are the feature, because that person looked at that and they were like, challenge accepted. I'm going to figure out how to make this crazy part, or this limitation, or, this thing that is not perfect. I'm going to move forward anyway, in the face of, imperfect circumstances, whatever that may be. We all have them. I'm going to make a change. And that is the main thing I've learned. And that's the main thing that I want to encourage everyone with, is that none of us have perfect circumstances, but we can all make a difference in our home. Let's not wait for the next house.
Not number 14 or 15, for example.
Yeah.
I love that, because I feel like I've absolutely punt and think, well, that's not working and I don't know what to do about it, instead of really being thoughtful. And the reason I love talking with you about this is because not only that the photos in this book and your own, I mean, I'm looking at your home right now as we're on this call, you know what you're doing. So that's very encouraging. But I also just love it that you have been able to dial back to real people life, right? Some of the things that inspire us in design books, or on Instagram, or on HGTV, we can love the way that looks and also think there's no stinking way. I don't currently have $100,000 for that particular project. So these rules are so helpful. And we're going to talk about a couple in specifics in just a couple of seconds. I would like to talk to you about style. You say that you are actually hoping that readers will not pick up your style or imitate your style. That's not the goal of the book and your work. It's to find their own and to love their own style. How in the world do we do this? How do we even start figuring out what we love or what our decorating style is?
It's tricky, because I think from like birth, we are taught that the goal is, whether it's our wardrobe or our house, to like take a quiz, name our style, and then then I'm not sure what, like, do we go to the store where the name of our style is and buy everything? Like, there's no next step. It's just like, you've got to name your style.
Right.
Style. But that's actually not how it works at all. But you're right. I do think that what gives us confidence is when we are confident in knowing what we like, not only when we just see it. It's one thing to see like a finished home of McGee and Co. and be like, I like that. Okay. And then you look at your own room and you're like, I don't like that. Yeah. Now what? What do we do? And so there is an order of decor. But I think more important than that is remembering that the more we know ourselves, the more we know our style. I definitely have I teach 12 ways to get in touch, because I don't think we lose our style. I think that we just get busy and we kind of forget about our style. And so one way that I like to reconnect with my style is just to kind of walk around my house. And I'll tell you, I do think I have a leg up on this, because I've been house making. I've been married for 30 years and we've lived in 15 houses. But one thing that I pay attention to is, what are the things in my house that I have had for a long, long time? And no matter what our house style, no matter what the trends are, I am able to work these things into our home. I'm able to use them. I love them. I still like them. And that gives me a little hint into what it is I love. For example, I have a white dresser that I bought for our son, who's like 26 now. I bought for his nursery. I changed diapers on top of it. And then we moved. It ended up like in our bathroom with towels in it. And then we moved again. It ended up in the kitchen with, keys and the homework. Then it ended up in a hallway. Then it ended up in our family room with DVDs in it. Then it ended up in my closet. And I love it. I'm like, I could have 10 of these dressers. That tells me, what is it about this dress where it's painted white? It's not really chippy, but it feels just a little bit country. I'm slightly country, but I like kind of a modern twist on that. Okay. So I usually pair it with something unexpected. So right now it's got, a taxidermy mount with a top hat over it. So this is kind of upstairs. And so it's so, I think part of why I like it is because it can easily, like, it's a chameleon. It can
Uh-huh.
change with
Right.
me. And so walk around your own house. What are some pieces that you have carried with you? Maybe it's something someone gave you and you always loved it in your grandmother's house. Gives you a hint into what you can be more confident in going into the future. I call it finding your timeless classics. What are
Mm-hmm.
your own timeless classics? It might be a specific type of furniture. It might be a shape, like maybe you love wingback chairs. Maybe you love like covered ottomans that are tufted and have fringe. Like maybe you love a function. Maybe you love unlacquered brass, or maybe you love toile or stripes. Anything, it's all great information because all of those things give us an extra boost of confidence the next time we are out and having to make a decision. We can say, oh, well, it is a striped fabric and I have like 23 striped things in my house and I love them all, and there
Yeah.
we have it.
Right. Okay. That's super helpful. You're data collecting in your own life.
It's like you're being a scientist, which is so
Uh-huh.
helpful because I can remember taking a master class about decorating, and it's a designer I love and she's so talented. But there is a difference between someone being a great designer and someone being a teacher. I like to think that I'm a teacher, and this lady who I buy all of her books, she's wonderful, but she is more creating a style to imitate, like give me the link to that coffee table. And I can remember her putting a table down next to a chair, beautiful home, and choosing between, she had 3 or 4 lamps, and she's like, I'm going to pick this one because it looks best. And I was like, uh, why? Why? I agree. How in the
Tell
world do
me
we?
why.
And that moment of frustration actually helped lead me to this book, because
Ah,
it's one thing to know what looks pretty in someone else's house, but it's another thing to evaluate what it is that we don't like about our own house. And now what do I do to fix it? And usually it is the smallest little tweaks. It's just
mm,
maybe you have too many rectangles. Maybe you don't have enough contrast. And so this house rules book is really, let me be your teacher. And it's like a troubleshooting book.
mm. It's brilliant. Seriously, I'm super excited about this because I think you're going to help a lot of people unstuck themselves, unstick themselves. Not sure what the verb is there, but I think it's so easy to feel exactly what you said. Feeling overwhelmed is absolutely um, something that inhibits us from feeling like ourselves in our own spaces. And I have a
Yes.
bunch of friends all along this continuum. Some of my friends, if their happiest place would be on a desert island with an HGTV hookup, so they could just watch and learn and absorb decorating and home forever. And other friends who take one look at this and think, I have no idea what to do, and I'm not even sure if I want to put the time into this.
Yeah.
And I think this book steps through the gap of all of that, because we spend a lot of time in our homes and we want them
Yeah.
to reflect what's important to us and be welcoming and hospitable places, not just for people who walk in, but for us.
For
Um,
us. Yeah. And
yeah.
the goal is for you to love your home. Not, I have never in my 17 years of doing this, I've never met one person who's like, can you help me make my house look better so I can really impress my sister-in-law and make everyone feel bad about their house and show off my great No, no, no.
No.
We just want to enjoy our home. We want to not be embarrassed of it. We want to think it looks pretty. We want to feel like it represents our family so that we can use it and enjoy it. And if you are
Mhm.
already doing that, you're doing it right.
Ah, it's so good. One of the things I love about how you speak about this and teach about this, write about this, you mentioned earlier, uh, we are not waiting for the lottery moment. This is for folks all along, wherever they are financially and in all different seasons of our lives as well. You write, I don't know if you wrote about this or I heard you speak about getting feeling, especially for renters or people who are in a home that they know I have lots of friends who are in grad school or are going to be in a
Mhm.
space for 2 years or 3, or, are with the military, or they're in transition. And it's easy to get, again, overwhelmed with the idea of, well, this isn't where I'm going to be forever. So what do you say to people who are maybe not in their forever spot, or what they hope to be their forever spot, but really
Mhm.
want to still have a home that feels
Yeah.
like them?
I definitely think that's most people. And I also believe that renters are like the unreached people group of the design
Yeah,
world.
right.
You feel like there's nothing for us. I wrote my first design book in a rental. All the photos are in a rental. And about half of our moves were, well, over half were rental homes. And I think that part of that feeling like I kept waiting until we owned a home. And finally I thought, oh my gosh, my kid's childhood is passing by. I don't want to wait to claim this house as our home until our name is on the mortgage. Our kids don't even know whose name is on the mortgage. So thinking about almost like the big romantic gestures of the rental home, because I can remember times where I would, we'd move in and I'd be like, well, I hate this pink carpet, but I guess I either have to decorate with pink or wait until my next house. Well, now I know, no. Actually, that's such a great time to think, well, maybe it's time for me to invest in a really big rug. And as a renter, I get to take that really big rug with me and I get to have something like, if I want a texture, if I want a color, whatever it is. Another thing I did in rentals, if I knew we were living there more than a year, that was my cutoff, then a lot of times we would change out the lighting, not in every room, but in a couple of main rooms, especially if the lighting was especially ugly or bossy or not my style. My husband, he had done it many times. So in about 30 minutes, he could change out a quick chandelier. I would find something from the Habitat Restore, spray paint it, get little shades, whatever it is. And it just felt like the house became ours. We would put the chandelier in a trash bag, label it, and the day we moved out, yes,
Put it
it's
back
an
up.
hour and a half and switch them back. But guess who was the happiest? And it felt like home.
Totally. No, that's super, super smart. I feel like we have more options than we think.
Yeah, totally.
For the person who is very good, and I want to ask you, there are so many great rules in this book that preparing for our conversation was actually not easy because I really have a lot of questions and would like you to have a masterclass of 48 hours. But one of the things you talk about is just in general is how to make the details in your home work for you. And I feel like I don't think I'm alone in this. I'm really good at the big gestures. I grew up, my grandpa was a painter for his work. My dad painted water towers in the summer for jobs. Yeah, it was horribly dangerous, but worked for him. And then for years, my brother and I, during college and in high school, we were his painters in rental properties that he managed and owned. And so we have a lot of painting experience in my family. So when I move into a home or when I decide this space is not working, my first instinct is to paint, make the big gesture, figure out scale for the pieces in the room, and then I get stuck. I always feel like my house, and I think I'm not alone with this. I've been chatting with some friends about this week. I feel like the big things we figure out and maybe get some help to figure out, but it's the personalization or the final touches or how to make that last 15 yards around the track work. I fail. So what would you say to me and to others who feel like in general, I like how this feels and how this looks, but I don't know that it doesn't look finished. It doesn't feel like this is like, we're done. This looks like the room that I want it to be. What would you say to that?
When we moved into our fixer-upper, this was about 12 years ago, I, unpacked, set up all my stuff, looked around the room and was really frustrated and overwhelmed because I didn't like the way it looked.
Yeah.
And I remember opening up Pinterest and I had pinned a few rooms that I liked when I thought about our new house that we were moving in. So I was there. I looked down at those rooms. I'm like, those are beautiful. I looked up in my room, like, this is a hot mess. What is the difference?
Yes.
What am I doing wrong? And I finally, as I was looking at those Pinterest rooms, I honed in on like one or two. And I thought, I'm just going to count the items. And I did. And from that, it was just one angle of a room. It is a photo. So it's not every single item. But in that photo of, 3 walls, I remember counting like 23 items, a sofa, a chair, a coffee table, a plant, big piece of artwork, drapes on, a chandelier. And then I looked up at my own room and I counted and I had like 58 items, 27 little things on the mantle. Okay. My coffee table had like literally like 11 items. I had 3 rugs because none of them were the right size. I had, a lamp that was really tiny on a dresser. And then it left all this empty space. So then I added like 4 more tchotchkes. wall art that was too small. And so I knew enough to know the balance was off. Like, this is too small. But instead of saying, therefore I shall size up, I just thought, I will add more. I'll add more small things.
Uh-huh.
So what that created was a room full of lots of small things that did not feel finished.
Mm.
And I believe that is America's number one decorating mistake, is what I was doing. And I learned that the major difference, besides nailing that scale, getting the things of the right scale, was that in every photo that I looked at, these rooms had large rugs. They had statement lighting. So the lighting added to the style, but it also like was functional and added to, you can read at night in the room.
Right, right.
And they had drapes hanging. Almost every room had drapes hung high and wide, framing all the beautiful light, not lighting, blocking lights of the windows. And my house did not really have any of that. And so I thought, could that be the secret? And I believe it's not, it's not going to take your room from nothing to everything. But you're right. Most of us have a sofa that we don't hate. We have enough seating for our family. We have a coffee table. We have our sofa in the right place. We like our paint color, but we don't have the in-between. And the in-between is what I call the homey trinity. The rugs, the right size, like in a family room, means that it is sitting under at least the front feet of the main seating. And so when you make the decisions in the right order, every decision gets easier. I would even say most of the time, now you're probably more a professional painter than most people, so you probably have some practice in picking out colors.
I do have a lot of practice. I don't know if I'm professional, but I do have a lot of practice. Yes, a lot of years.
Be confident in your wall color, and that's okay. But for people who aren't, your paint on your walls is step 4, because we don't want a $45 gallon paint to boss now our $2,000 sofa or our $1,000 sofa or the sofa that we have $200
for sure
on Facebook Marketplace.
For sure.
We want this
Not the first step
of decor. Yes. And so, and also as you're living in a house or, changing your mind. And so when you make your decisions in the right order, they get easier, but also decision number 1 dictates now what you might decide for decision number 2, dictates what is an option for number 3. And it works like, well, kind of like magic. But yes, the homey trinity. Do you have rugs? Do you have drapes? Do you have lighting? In my living room, I think I have 9 types of light. And I don't even have, we live in an old house. There is no overhead lighting.
Overhead.
A pair of little lamps, another lamp by itself, like 2 swing arm lamps that you can, aim the lighting. We have a sconce. So all of these different layers, they add so much ambiance, coziness, and function to the room. And that's something that I never, like, who taught us that? Like, I never learned about pockets of coziness with lighting in my house until, if I'm at Home Goods and there's a skinny little see-through silver light, and then there's one with a big, beautiful base, and they're the same price, like, choose the one with the big, beautiful base, because it adds to the style of your home. And if you're going to have a lamp sitting there anyway, why not decorate with something you can actually see?
So smart and wise. And I'm so glad you figured this out, because you're putting language to what we need, not just that I like this, I don't like this. It's how do we get there? Love that. Okay. I'm going to rapid fire ask you to kind of untangle or unravel just a little bit some of these specific rules. And again, you have 100 in this book. Okay. So there's so much good stuff here. There's no way I can get to all of it, and then we won't. But I have a couple questions that just to give readers or listeners an idea of what this looks like in your book and how you teach. Here's a rule: respect the boss in the room.
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
Well, first of all, let me tell everyone what rule number 1 is, which is learn the rules, then break them beautifully. The whole goal, that is in any creative endeavor, the goal is to make it your own.
Right.
What I found is, though, if we don't know what the rules are, we're just blindly making decisions. And
it's willy-nilly. It's willy-nilly.
It's the worst.
Yeah.
We're using real money. I mean, it's supposed to be fun, but that doesn't mean that decorating is easy. And so I want people to learn the rules. And then I want you to be like, oh, I'm not going to follow that one. That is totally fine. So, okay, we have that. So what was the rule that you asked about? Oh, the boss.
Respect the boss. Yes.
Yes. This is something I fought for so long. We would move into a house and, for example, the last rental house we were in had granite countertops, but they kind of had like a pink undertone.
Mm.
And then also they went ahead and chose tile on the floor with a pink undertone, and the backsplash had a pink undertone,
Pink.
and the walls had
There's
a
a
pink
theme.
undertone.
Okay.
Right. So everything had just like a sweet little pink undertone. It wasn't pink. My husband's like, it's not pink, but it was pink. What that meant was, in this rental house that we lived in for 3 years, I believe, it meant I was limited. I could the pink was my boss. Let me put it that way.
Okay.
When you have a boss, you can respect your boss and work with it, or you can change your boss. But you don't get to ignore your boss and pretend like it doesn't exist unless you don't care how your house looks. And in that house, I would not have chosen the granite, the tile color, the wall color, all of that. But that was my boss. So I was renting, so I couldn't change it. So I had to respect it. So that meant that house with its kind of bossy boss of this pink undertone, and me with my own unique style. Together, we had to find a style that worked for both of us.
We needed to look at the Venn diagram,
challenge.
people, see where they're going to work together. Yep.
Yep. And it works when you go in that way, because I wasn't trying to force my style blindly on a house that already came with its own stuff. It's the same in my last house. My boss was our orangey pine wood floors. They were beautiful, but not what I would have chosen, but I didn't care enough to change them because I didn't want to spend thousands of dollars. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to work with this boss. But, again, like the color yellow, like a teal color those colors don't really get along with orange, at least not to me. So it limited what colors, like blue worked great in that house. My blue willow and denim, it looked so good. But other colors, maybe even colors that I loved, didn't necessarily. So I had to identify my boss. Now, when we moved in, the walls were hunter green. I was like, nope, we're going to change that. I changed that boss.
Yeah.
So in any room that you're doing work in, it's helpful to say, is there a boss in here? Now, sometimes you love the boss. Sometimes you don't like the boss. It could be like brick on your fireplace, but you don't get to ignore your boss.
So I have to know, how did you and Pinky Town work together? How did it work?
I did a lot of neutrals, and I brought in a lot of like copper kind of tones, like an orangey, salmony worked really well. And
interesting.
A really, really muddy green, like a brown green worked really well in there. And so it was looking back, it was a really fun challenge to help me be true to my style, but also honor what was in the house and not be crazy. Because I don't want to just buy things that match something I hate.
Right.
I still wanted to be in my own style, things I could take with me. And it worked out. And if you want to see the photos, you can go look at my old book from 2013 called Nesting Place. It doesn't have to be perfect to be beautiful. All those photos were in that house with a pink undertone in every room.
How about that? So you very much made peace with it.
Yeah.
And figured out how to work.
Magazines came out, and, Better Homes and Gardens was there. We were in the Christmas Better Homes and Gardens, cottages and bungalows. Like, challenge accepted.
Unbelievable. That's unbelievable. I would panic with that much pink, but you didn't, Myquilyn, and that's why your job is for you.
Kim, I panicked at first. Don't give me that much credit.
Amazing. From panic to BH&G. Okay. Here's another rule. Decorating. You talk about find your decorating era. This is so wise. We do not do it. Coach us.
Yeah, I have a quiz about this. Anyone can take it. It's free. I'll give you the link later if you want it. Okay, so I think that, again, we grow up with these magazines like Find Your Style and Name Your Decorating Style.
Totally.
You do not have to name your style in order to attain your style, but I do think it can be endlessly helpful to know what to focus on right now in your life. And so I like to say, I think there are 4 or 5 eras, and they have to do with how you are using your home. And that makes all the difference in how you approach the decisions that you're making, what changes need to happen in your home. When you know how you need to use your home right now and for the next couple of years, it's much less about finding a cute name for your style. Forget that. You do not need to.
You're saying, what's the era you're living? In other
Yes,
words,
it's
because
not
when
about
I
your
first,
home's era.
right.
Yeah, it's not
Or
like, oh,
like
I
you
live in a
really love
Victorian.
50s Art Deco or whatever. You're saying,
No,
what is
that's
the era
cool.
of your life that
What
you're,
is your personal
yes.
era?
Mhm.
Exactly.
And how to make your house and space work for that time. My time right now is 2 teenagers still at home and all sorts of other things swirling around. It will be different in 10 years.
Yeah.
And it was a lot different 10 years ago. So paying
Yes.
attention to that as you're creating your space. That's what you're saying.
Absolutely. Home is never done. And let's let that be a good thing instead
Yeah,
of being
that's
like, oh
right.
my gosh, that sounds horrible. No, that's so wonderful because it means our lives are changing
Mm,
as they should be. And our home is here to serve us, not the other way around. So, of course, it should be changing with us.
right. No, that's super freeing. Um, Collected over time is one of your rules. I'd love for you to talk about
Yes.
that.
It can feel like, especially when you're younger and you get in, a new place and you just think, I wish I could go to my favorite furniture store, shopping spree, buy everything new and be done. And of course, I mean, that still sounds wonderful. If someone wanted to give me $10,000 to spend in my favorite store, I will take Crate and
I
Barrel,
will
please. Thank you
accept
very
that.
much.
Thank you.
But let me tell you what will happen in about 6 years. On the very same day, you will hate everything in your room because it was collected at the exact same
Uh-huh.
time. And we want to have things that have some things are older than us, some things have a history, some things are brand new, and we rotate them in and out over time as they're serving us, as they, work with our unique style and all of those things. And so that gives us a home that we're never sick of all on one day. Even if I were like the richest person on the planet, I would still shop secondhand all of the time. I
Yeah.
believe that is where you find the most interesting, unique, soulful pieces that have lasted through another family. I love secondhand items. And so collect those items over time, add to it, and your home will feel like, you can't quite put your finger on it. We go on some people's homes and we're like, oh, I can tell they decorated this in 1997.
Yep. That was
We
a
don't
good
want
year
our
for
house to
Pottery
feel like
Barn for
that.
this person. Yeah, right.
Yes.
All on the same day. Right.
Uh-huh.
Um, any tips and tricks as we are second handing and thrifting? Because, I mean, we have beautiful antique malls around where I live. And if I don't have my wits together, I walk in and think, first of all, either there's one or, well, there are two things that happen. Either I think, oh gosh, that's a really fascinating thing. I should purchase it. I get it out of the store and think that was a horrible decision. Or it's so overwhelming, just the amount of stuff. And most of it
Yeah,
is not the right fit for me. So, how do you approach that? What do you tell people to look for and do in those spaces?
great question. I love an antique mall, but I agree. I mean, our local one is like 80,000 square feet with
Oh, heavens.
700 booths.
Oh,
Like
my
what?
gosh.
And so what I have learned to do is instead of like, I'm looking for a pepper mill. No, no. I call it minding my materials. It's actually an extra house rule that if you get the audiobook, which is free if you
Ah,
pre-order, I don't know when this will come out.
okay,
But this is
great.
what you do. Before you ever go, just remember how earlier we talked about walking around your house and paying attention to your timeless classics.
Hmm.
It's kind of the same thing, only with materials. Like, for example, in my house, I love mixing metals. I love iron and I love gilded gold and I love brass and I love silver and I love, chrome. Like, I love metals. I
Uh-huh.
love any hides, like rabbit pelts and
Hmm.
zebra and whatever. I love animal hides. I
Okay.
love linen. I love denim. I love velvet. Start thinking of the
Uh-huh.
materials that you love. Maybe you love oak, or maybe you love shiny mahogany. Then once you I mean, I have a list that's probably 40 things long of materials that I love. I collect green glass. I love transferware that's brown and black. What it does is it gives me confidence when I walk in this 80,000 square foot antique
Right.
mall. I just scan for materials. I'm not looking at specific items. I'm like, oh, that's
Interesting.
a velvet. Oh, that's green glass. What's that? And it changes the mindset. And it's
Aha.
like a little treasure hunt then.
That is super smart because there is just so much.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like you're sifting immediately through all the things you don't
Yeah.
to find the
Yeah.
things you do. Oh, that's super smart. I love that. Okay, last rule question. What is your favorite rule today? You have 100, Michael, and so I'm positive you don't
Oh
have all 100 at
my
the
gosh.
top. No,
Wow, my
no,
favorite
not in
rule.
your book. I just mean in your life, like what you're doing in your own home or in your own projects. What's one that you're thinking about this very day?
Let it be easy. It is actually a rule.
Okay.
But it's a thing my sister and I say to each other all the time. And it's something that it's like a mantra that I try to live by because I find myself making things more difficult and complicated than they need to be.
I'm president
If
of
you
that
read,
club.
okay,
Yes.
I am the
Hmm.
president, I'm
No.
vice
Yeah.
president. We
Okay.
are
We
in it
can
together.
co-president. Okay.
And so I will ask myself, like, what this is a Greg McKeown. If you've read his books, like Effortless, he talks about this, like, what would this look like if it were easy? And so that's something I try to
Mm,
ask myself, like, ooh, am I making this like 10 steps harder than it has to be? Usually the
yeah.
answer is yes. So how can I let this be easy?
I love that. I need that. As your co-president, I would like us both to give up that leadership role. You
Yes.
mentioned your sister, Emily P. Freeman.
Yeah.
She is a podcast. You are in a podcasting family. She is
Yeah.
a podcaster and an author. You are a podcaster and author. I'm wondering specifically about the podcasting, how you have found it, because as far as I could tell, this is a newer venture with this book, or did I miss
Yeah.
another one?
No, it's new. And
Okay. What do you think about it?
first of all, my sister and I, our dad was in radio and he started a blog before we ever did. And he's got a book as well. Like
Oh
he's
my
the first one. Isn't
gosh.
that funny? He
Okay.
was like a morning
This
show
runs
DJ.
deep. This is a
Yeah.
genetics
And my
situation.
sister has been podcasting and writing way before me, 5 years, 6 years. And I think I finally started. I liked the medium for a long time, but I felt like, well, I have to do something visual because
Uh-huh.
talk
Right.
about visual things. But then finally, especially with this book, I realized actually sometimes it's helpful to remove the visual
Mm.
because then instead of you getting distracted by like my ugly lamp that you hate, you're thinking about your lamp that you love or the lamp that
Uh-huh.
you saw in the Pottery Barn magazine. And so once that shifted, I was like, ooh, this could be a really good way to talk about decorating. Now, I feel like all of you guys never told me that I would be writing a 2,000 word speech every week. What the heck? I do not like speech writing. It's so much work. I don't know how y'all do it. I don't do
I
interviews, which I
don't.
think would even be worse. It's
No, it's
exhausting,
not.
everyone.
No,
It's
that's
the worst.
hilarious. It was a
It is
bait
the
and switch.
worst.
Emily didn't tell you. She did not
No,
tell you
just
that part.
like, sorry.
It'll be great. It's fun. Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Well, listen, it was the right move because that podcast is such a great resource. I have lapped
Oh,
it up. The
thank
episodes are
you.
about 20 minutes per. You go into one specific question, you walk me through how to make this actually work in my own house. And I agree with you. It is a twist to have it be all audio and not visual. And I think that's a superpower because I
Yes.
go straight to my own house. I'm
Yeah.
not distracted by your gorgeous house, though I love it. I'm really thinking, well, today, how do I make this work? So I'm so sorry it's so much work with the speech writing. You must continue. Oh boy. Okay, I'm going to let you go to your normal life. But before I let you do that, I have a question I ask most of my guests, and it is, I call it the book nerd question. That's absolutely what I write down on my notes.
Mm.
Um, and I ask about resources or book, usually books, but sometimes film or whatever the person's mojo is, what things they recommend over and over and over to folks. And then also something they're looking forward to. And I'd love to do this design edition. So do you
Yes.
have any resource? It could be anything. It could be you've mentioned courses. I know you actually are having a retreat coming up, a in-person retreat. I think it's sold out, but it could be something like that. Anything that you point people toward over and over. You've got to read or intake this. And then is there something you're looking forward to for your own self in that regard?
Okay. Well, one of the books that I think every person who is making design decisions should have is by Deborah Needleman. It's called The Perfectly Imperfect Home. It's old. Well, I mean,
Okay.
it's 15 years old. And it's full of watercolors, kind of like the podcasts. Like there are not images of
Ah,
people's rooms. And it's funny because when you read the Amazon reviews, some people are mad, like, ah, I wish this were an image. And I'm like, no, 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 no. That's the whole point.
right, right.
And so she does such a good job of, she goes room by room. And I think that's such a great resource.
Wonderful.
If
Okay,
you're
we'll
a
put
book
this
person.
all in the show notes, everybody.
Yes,
So that's a
I
great
love that
recommendation.
one. Another book that I love is It's actually for wardrobe, but it's called Classic Style. It's by Kate Shelter. It is also a watercolor book. I do have books that aren't
Okay.
watercolor arts. That's just happened
The
to speak
theme.
to me right now.
That's
I
great.
love it. Even though she's talking about your wardrobe, I see the world through house colored glasses, and everything she talks about in finding your own personal style, it applies to decor as well. And it's just like
Interesting.
a fun little cute gift book that is just delightful.
Awesome. Wonderful. Any other books or resources you're looking forward to diving into? You can't think about this right now. You're in the middle of a book release season. Try to imagine it's July and it is August, and you don't have to be thinking about your own particular book. Is there anything you're looking forward to diving into? It doesn't have to be design. Could be your favorite
Yeah,
news story writer.
the new menopause book by
Okay.
Claire. Hagner, is that her last name? Hi, I'm 50 and I'm in menopause, or I'm post-menopausal, and I'm gonna read the menopause book.
Wonderful. Well,
Can't
that's
wait.
a light read. We go from watercolor to your
Right.
ovaries.
That's a small
Wonderful.
beach read.
Perfect. I see no problems with that. Myquilyn, I am so grateful that we had this time together. Thank you for taking it to hang out with me. And also, thank you for House Rules, this new book. It is so fantastic for your podcast. I just think you're going to help so many people. You already have. We're just on the train together. So thank you. I so appreciate it. Godspeed to you.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks for having me.